Hey everybody, welcome. We are back once again. It is Thursday evening for those of you that are Protestant Christians. It is Maundy Thursday, or I guess Catholics too. Orthodox is on a different calendar. But yeah, we're going to have yet another one of our late night conversations. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be a great show. We're going to talk about an important topic. Get more comfortable in my chair here. We're going to talk about an important topic tonight. Before I do that, quick reminder, the way we do things here. I give my opening remarks about what it is that I want to talk about for the evening. That's what I generally do. While I am giving my opening remarks, I am taking note of people's super chat questions or their Rumble rant questions. Tonight we are on Rumble and on YouTube. So if there's something you want me to talk about, send a super chat or a Rumble rant. I'm taking note of those as they come in. Then after I give my opening remarks, I do the roll call and we find out who it is that's watching, who's watching live, who's on the other side of the camera. And that's always a lot of fun. Always a lot of fun. And once we do the roll call, the rest of the show after that is just me answering your super chat and Rumble rant questions. You guys make the second half of the show what it is with your questions, getting me talking, got something for me to react to. So I encourage you, as someone who's watching this live, to make the second half of the show your own. Use your power wisely. Get me talking about something. Think of something you'd like me to react to. Send a super chat or a Rumble rant or a Rockfin tip. Well, we're not on Rockfin tonight, so a super chat or a Rumble rant. Get me talking about something in the second half of the show. Always appreciated. And yeah, that's the way we do it. It's a 3-part show. Opening remarks, roll call with the audience, and answering super chat questions. And it's a community here. If I didn't want to interact with all of you, if I didn't have my eyes on the chat the whole time, I see Deborah Wilson is watching. I see David Fox is watching. I assume Doug is watching. Valen Anderson. If I wasn't watching the chat the whole time, I wouldn't be doing this. This is an interactive experience, and I am here to engage with all of you to discuss the way the world is, how we can make it better, the struggle against imperialism. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Just a quick announcement for those of you who may not yet be aware, we are having, coming up at the end of April 26th through 29th, we are having our National Education Workshop. It'll be 4 days where you'll get to meet other people that are anti-imperialist from our community. 4 days up in the mountains in Vermont. It's going to be awesome. You don't want to miss it. If you're part of this community, if you'd like to meet other anti-imperialists, you really ought to register and come. And you can register at this link that is down below on the description. I'll drop it in the chat on both platforms here. We'd love to have you join us. It's going to be 4 days in the mountains, meeting other anti-imperialists, classes, bonding activities, fun stuff, good food. It'll be catered. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please come. We would love to have you there. You can register at this link. Just want to remind people of the upcoming National Educational Workshop. Just wanted to remind people of that. And now I am going to jump right in to my opening remarks for tonight. If you have got a super chat to send in, please send it in. Get me talking about something in the second half of the show. You guys make the second half of the show happen. So I'm going to take a drink of water. The title of the stream tonight, I decided to go for. Decided to go with globalism equals imperialism. Globalism equals imperialism. And the reason I decided to go with that title was because there's a lot of confusion about this from all sectors. And I see confusion from leftists and socialists. I see confusion from Trumpers and conservatives. I see confusion from people around the world that I know. I see confusion from people that I know in the United States. So let's just talk about this. First, what is imperialism? Well, Caleb, imperialism is when one country invades another country. They're being imperialist. They're imperializing that other country. That's what imperialism is. It's a policy. It's a thing that countries do when they're being mean to each other. One country's being mean to another country, and that's called imperialism. A country's mean to another country, and that's called imperialism. I learned this in college. I'm smart. Wrong. But Caleb, Russia is imperialist because Russia is invading Ukraine, and that's like what imperialism is. It's when one country invades another country, and that's like imperialism because that's what I learned. Wrong. Imperialism is not a policy. Imperialism is a system. Let me repeat that. Imperialism is not a policy. Imperialism is a system. Imperialism is an economic system that emerged in the late 1800s. Often I do hear people say that we don't live in regular capitalism anymore. And they say we live in corporatism. We live in crony capitalism. Well, they're wrong and they're right. We don't live in industrial capitalism anymore. We don't live in the era of railroad magnates and steel giants and robber barons. We don't live in the era of Andrew Carnegie any longer. We live in the era of bankers, financiers, and we don't live in the era of national economies. We live in the era of a global international economy. Beginning in the 1890s, we saw the rise of trusts, cartels, and syndicates based in Western countries. And we saw the dominance of finance capital over industrial capital. manufacturing corporations, oil companies and energy corporations, corporations that provide services, all became subservient and under the dominion of banks. Finance capital became dominant over industrial capital. And we saw the rise of big banks that had corporations grouped around them that functioned as ultra monopolies that dominated the national economy of certain countries, of Western countries. Britain was dominated by a few big banks. America was dominated by a few big banks. France and Germany were dominated by a few big banks. And these big banks that had control over major corporations began spreading their enterprises across the planet. And this was called the export of capital. It used to be that countries exported products, right? The United States, we have a lot of trees, so America exported lumber, right? In England, they got a lot of coal, so Britain exported coal. But that changed in the late 1800s. And instead of exporting commodities and products, we began exporting corporations. The corporations themselves became the export, not the product. This was called the export of capital. And corporations that manufactured products and performed services were subservient to finance houses and banks that provided the capital and the lending and the credit. And the economies of the Western countries were dominated by these trusts, cartels, syndicates, groups of corporations centered around banks. And these corporations centered around banks began spreading their tentacles all across the planet. And they began seizing parts of what we call the third world, or the colonized world, the developing world, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, parts of Latin America. They began seizing those territories and utilizing their raw materials, taking their oil, taking their rubber, taking their minerals. They began utilizing and seizing the raw materials of the colonized world and seizing the markets of developing countries. Certain countries in the third world would become under the dominion of France, and almost all of South and Central America came under the dominion of the United States. And big parts of Asia became under the dominion of the British. And whole national economies became consumed by foreign corporations with the export of capital. And all of this led capitalism, the system of production organized for profit, the system of private ownership of the means of production, it led capitalism to enter a new stage. This wasn't the capitalism of factory owners hiring factory workers. This was the capitalism of ultra corporations based in the Western countries, dominating the globe and seizing sections of the globe for themselves. And this economic system, where trusts, cartels, and syndicates centered around finance capital, engage in the export of capital and carve out sections of the world as their spheres of influence. This global system is called imperialism. It's imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. Capitalism in its monopolistic stage. The era of industrial capitalism was competitive. But the era that we live in now is the era of huge corporations that dominate the planet. And these huge corporations hold back development around the world. They prevent countries from developing their own economy. And they dominate the economy of developing countries. They seize them as captive markets, and they use them to dump their excess commodities. And I can point to a number of examples of imperialism, how the imperialist system does this. For example, the British were the first capitalist country to go full on into the stage of imperialism. And the British colonized many different countries around the world. One of the countries that they colonized was India. And when the British colonized India, what did they do? They used India as a captive market. For example, the people of India have been weaving their own cloth for thousands of years. But the British burned all the looms of India and forced the people of India to import their cloth from Britain, from the textile manufacturers of Britain. You know, people know about Gandhi, the Indian independence activist, the pacifist. Well, what did Gandhi do, right? There's plenty of criticism of Gandhi. Gandhi was anti-communist. Gandhi was at one point sympathetic to the Hitler and the Nazis, but put all of that aside, what did Gandhi do? What was his main act of civil disobedience? Gandhi would boil seawater. And that was what he did. He boiled seawater to make his own salt, which was illegal when India was a British colony. In India, you had to buy your salt from British corporations. You could not boil seawater to make your own salt. There's many examples of this. Like another great example would be to look at the African continent. What country in Africa is the top oil exporting country? What country in Africa has the most of the most valuable commodity in the global economy? What country in Africa has the most oil? That would be, at this point, the top oil exporting country in Africa is Nigeria. And Nigeria has a very low life expectancy. In Nigeria, there is malnutrition. People are hungry. And in Nigeria, there is a low rate of literacy. A lot of adults in Nigeria have never been to school. Big sections of the country do not have electricity. And there are millions of people who live in Nigeria, in this very, very, very wealthy country that has more oil than any other African country, who live in utter extreme poverty. Why? Because that oil that Nigeria has does not belong to the Nigerian people. It belongs to ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron. And the profits from Nigeria's oil don't go into the Nigerian economy. They go into the pockets of big Wall Street banks and corporations. The export of capital, oil companies from the West have exported to Nigeria, seized its raw materials, and dominate its economy. Another example of imperialism. People in Mexico have been growing their own food since before Christopher Columbus showed up. But in the 1990s, Bill Clinton signed a treaty called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And NAFTA made it illegal for Mexico to subsidize its own farmers, and also made it illegal to put any tax or restrictions on the import of American agricultural products. So after NAFTA was signed, American agribusiness companies like Kraft and Nestle started importing all kinds of food into Mexico, and they put the Mexican farmers out of business. And now Mexico, a country that has been growing its own food for thousands of years, imports most of its food from American corporations as a captive market. That's imperialism. Imperialism is an economic system. It is about holding back economic development, and it is about keeping the world poor so that big banks and big corporations in Wall Street and in London can stay rich. It is an economic system that is about stopping development and impoverishing countries. Free trade is imperialism. Free trade means that countries cannot erect tariffs, cannot restrict foreign corporations, that big Western corporations come in and destroy the economies of developing countries. That's what free trade is. Free trade is imperialism. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, these are imperialist institutions. Impoverished countries get loans from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and from the World Bank in order to finance the building of things like hospitals and schools and such. But in exchange for those loans, they have to let their laws and their economy be directed by the international bankers. And part of the requirements to get IMF loans is that they must lift tariffs, that they must deregulate, they must allow American corporations or British corporations to come in, that they must, in some cases, restrict the amount of electricity that they use, restrict the amount of natural resources that they use. And BlackRock Corporation is very big on requiring countries to not develop and to not advance their own economy in order to get loans. They do it in the name of environmentalism. You can do it in the name of environmentalism. You can do it in the name of free trade. You can do it in the name of whatever it is. It's imperialism. It is about preventing countries from developing their own economy. Imperialism is an economic system. Capitalists, people who own factories, people who own businesses, the way that they support themselves is they make profits, right? If you own a store, you got to have more money at the end of the day than you started out with. They make profits. But imperialism and the huge banks that dominate the Western countries and dominate the world, and the huge multinational corporations that dominate imperialism and capitalism in its monopoly stage, they don't just make profits, they make super profits because they dominate the entire world. And they rake in super profits. They're raking in profits from every corner of the world, and they're doing it by keeping countries impoverished, by restricting countries' ability to develop their own economy, by forcing countries to be impoverished client states. They make super profits. And because they make super profits, they are able to control governments. And war is not imperialism. War is a mechanism that the imperialists use to enforce their system. Because all of the countries that are targeted by the United States are countries that have broken free from imperialism, that have broken out of the imperialist system. Those are the countries that the United States and Britain and France and NATO go to war with. They're countries that have broken out of imperialism. And war is carried out in order to advance the super profits of the multinational corporations and in order to beat down any country that breaks out of their system and begins to develop. And I'll give you many examples of this. One example, Russia. In the 1990s, the Soviet Union fell, and Russia was impoverished, and the state assets were being sold off, and the factories were being closed down. And Russia was economically devastated in the 1990s. And at that point, the United States loved Russia. They had no problem with Russia. Boris Yeltsin was a good friend of Bill Clinton because Russia was desperately poor. And instead of growing their own food, the state farm system of the Soviet Union shut down, and they had to import all their food from American corporations. And if you looked at Russia's economy, it was awful in the 1990s. Mass unemployment, hunger on the streets, and American companies like BP, British Petroleum, like Hermitage Capital Management, big corporations were making out like bandits and looting Russia economically, and the USA had no problem with Russia. But then, in 1999, Russia elected a new president named Vladimir Putin. And what was Vladimir Putin's platform when he ran for president? Well, he was going to stop the Chechen terrorists. But on top of that, he said he would fix Russia's economy by creating Gazprom and Rosneft, two state-controlled energy corporations, and reasserting control over Russia's oil and Russia's natural gas, and rebuilding Russia's economy centered around oil and gas. And that's what the Russian president did when Vladimir Putin got elected. He used the government to reassert state control and to build up Russian oil and Russian gas with these two state-run companies. And he used the proceeds from the oil and gas companies to rebuild the industrial sector, to rebuild the manufacturing. And it was very successful. And Russia's economy recovered from the disaster of the fall of the Soviet Union. Unemployment went down, wages went up, living standards increased. And now Russia is the enemy of the United States. Now Wall Street and the Pentagon and American television hate Russia. Why? Because Russia is no longer under the control of the imperialists. Russia broke free from imperialism and it became an enemy. When Russia was impoverished and being looted economically, they had no problem with Russia. And this is how you need to understand international relations. China used to be the sick man of Asia, one of the poorest countries in the world. But the Chinese Communist Party built China up. And now China is an industrial superpower, makes half the steel in the world. It has the world's largest telecommunications manufacturer, Huawei technology, that makes way better phones than Apple does. And so, of course, now China is considered an enemy. It used to be China was a captive market. With two opium wars, the British invaded China and forced free trade onto China, forced China to submit their economy to become a captive market to the British Empire. And people starved and died all the time, but they had no problem with China then because it was under their dominion. But when China broke free and when China built up its own economy, when China became a competitor rather than a captive market, at that point, China became an enemy. You look at all the countries that the USA has invaded. All of them tend to be countries that have broken out of imperialism, broken out of this global system of monopolistic capitalism. And asserted control over their own economy. Iraq, under the leadership of Saddam Hussein, was a country that had broken out of imperialism. Saddam Hussein was the leader of the Ba'athist Arab Socialist Party. And he took power and he put the oil of Iraq under state control, and he sold oil on the international markets in competition with Wall Street and London. And he used the money, the government oil money, to build things like hospitals and schools. And that's why the United States invaded Iraq and destroyed it. Libya used to have the highest life expectancy on the African continent. Until 2011, Libya was the most prosperous country in Africa. Libya was an oil country. It has a huge amount of oil. And under the leadership of Gaddafi, they had seized control of their oil. They were selling oil on the international markets in competition with Wall Street. They were using the money from their oil to industrialize and build up the country. They wiped out illiteracy in the country. They created universal housing. They wiped out homelessness. In addition to that, Libya had the world's largest irrigation system, and they were greening the desert so they could grow their own food. They didn't have to import their own food. They had the Great Man-Made River. Google it. The world's largest irrigation system built with that oil money. They had seized control of their oil, and they were using the oil money to build up an independent economy. But now Libya has joined the free market, imperialist, free trade global system. NATO bombed and destroyed Libya. The government of Libya was overthrown by the United States. And now Libya's oil has been destroyed. Its oil market has been destroyed. Libya exports about 10% of the oil that it once exported. The country is in ruin. A lot of the country still doesn't have electricity, even over a decade after the war. All right, this is imperialism. Libya broke out of imperialism and built itself up, and that's why Gaddafi was called a dictator, and that's why they were designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, and that's why we were told that Gaddafi was violating human rights, and that's why the United States destabilized and eventually toppled the government of Libya. Every government that we're told to hate is a government that has broken out of imperialism. Venezuela, right? Huge oil country. And with Hugo Chavez, they reasserted state control over their economy. They took control of their oil resources. They started using their oil to build schools and hospitals. They wiped out illiteracy. And of course, they called Hugo Chavez a dictator. And Jimmy Carter, the Carter Center, they went there and they monitored the elections. They said, these are fair elections. Didn't matter. U.S. media still said he's a dictator. Why? Because he seized control of Venezuela's economy. Venezuela stopped being a captive market. Venezuela was not Nigeria, a country where the oil is under the control of Wall Street. Venezuela was a country where the oil was under the control of the Venezuelan state and was being used to benefit the Venezuelan economy. And that's why the USA has tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government over and over and over again. And that's why they've put sanctions onto Venezuela to wreck their economy, to prevent them from importing food. That's why they have called Hugo Chavez and his successor Maduro dictators and funded people that are trying to violently overthrow them. Every country that is targeted by Wall Street, that is targeted by the Pentagon, that is targeted by the sanctions and the threats of war, every country the USA invades is a country that has broken out of imperialism. Imperialism is a global economic system, and it is an economic system that is dying. And around the world, many countries have decided they don't want to be part of the imperialist system anymore. They want to have control of their own countries. And so, in a desperate drive to keep control of the world, the imperialists attack and attack and attack. It's not about human rights. It's not about freedom. It's not about aggression. It's not about stopping genocide. It's not about any of that bullshit. It's about imperialism and the domination of the world by banks and corporations based in the Western countries that seek to extract super profits to enrich themselves. And that is what you have to understand. However, and this is the important part, what I'm telling you now, the world has been this way since the 1890s. Big banks and corporations based in Western countries have been making super profits. Countries around Africa and Asia and Latin America have been kept in chronic poverty, underdeveloped, kept as captive markets. None of that is new, but there is something new, and that is what I want to talk to you about tonight. Because it used to be that if you lived in America, if you lived in France, you lived in Germany, you lived in Britain, that some of that wealth trickled down to you. It used to be that in order to have class peace at home, they provided a good life or a better life to some of the population. Right? We remember the 1950s, that white picket fence, and that father who's working and the wife doesn't have to work, and he's got a nice car and a refrigerator. And it used to be that in the imperialist homelands, there was a layer of people, factory workers, steel workers, auto workers, meat packers, who got a decent wage, who got a comfortable life. The imperialists were going all over the planet extracting super profits. So for a layer of people at the homeland, and a layer of people at home in Britain and France, Germany, the United States, for a layer of people, there was a comfortable existence. And those folks were called the aristocracy of labor. They were workers. They sold their labor to a boss, but they had such a comfortable lifestyle that they tended to support their government. They said, look, hey, we're getting taken care of. We've got a better standard of living than anyone else anywhere in the world. You know, we're going to support our government. We're going to support its wars. They had a material interest in doing so. But those days are long gone. The aristocracy of labor is being completely demolished. There ain't no factories no more. Those factories have been closed down, and they haven't all been moved to Mexico either. Most of them have just replaced human labor with machine labor. Steel mills used to hire thousands and thousands of people. Now a steel mill can have less than 100 workers and do the same amount of work. It's mainly technology that has eliminated industrial jobs. But there are other factors as well. Regardless, Detroit used to be Motor City, and now Detroit is an impoverished ghost town in a lot of places. There's blocks and blocks and blocks in Detroit where you see nothing but empty houses. And all throughout the United States, you see post-industrial wastelands. Cities that used to be booming industrial centers, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Minneapolis, Buffalo, Syracuse. You see so many cities throughout the American heartland that used to be prosperous centers of industry where there'd be thousands of people working in factories, getting paid good jobs. Cleveland. Now you don't see that anymore. It used to be the way imperialism worked was that people around the third world got super exploited and impoverished. And people in the United States got a little bit of a bribe so they could live comfortably. And in exchange for that, they supported the wars and they supported the government. And they said, America is the greatest country in the world. Love it or leave it. If you don't like it here, move to another country. That's how it used to be. And that was the normal setup of imperialism. But that has changed. The computer revolution has gotten to the point that they don't need a layer of well-paid workers in the homeland. They don't. And the next generation of Americans are stuck in a lifetime of low-wage, short-term service sector jobs. And the communities throughout the United States that used to be prosperous communities are now full of heroin gangs and crime and poverty. And the suicide rate is the highest it's been in a long time. And the U.S. life expectancy is the lowest it has been in 25 years. And what the imperialists used to only do to countries in Africa and countries in Asia, countries in Latin America, they are starting to do to the imperialist homelands. Because in their high-tech economic system, they don't need a labor aristocracy anymore. They don't need workers anymore. And their rate of profits is going down. And this is the natural problem of the capitalist mode of production. The worker can never buy back what he produces. The wages the worker gets paid are never enough to buy back what he produces. And this problem gets exacerbated by technology. And we're entering a period where, at this point, they say that self-driving cars that drive themselves, are just less than a decade away. And in a rational society, self-driving cars would be great because driving would no longer be necessary. And all the human labor that's expended on driving could be expended elsewhere to be more productive. In a rational society, self-driving cars would be a miracle, a labor-saving miracle, but not in capitalism, not in imperialism, capitalism in its monopoly stage. In this system, self-driving cars would mean millions of truck drivers out of work. It would mean millions of Uber drivers out of work. It would mean millions of people who work in traffic courts out of work. It would mean millions of state highway patrolmen who patrol the highway and give people tickets out of work. It would mean gas stations would shut down. It would be a nightmare. And what sense does that make? Why should people be poorer because a great technological breakthrough happens? That's not rational. Abundance and technological advancement should lead to wealth and prosperity for all. But in a system where your only value is your ability to sell your labor power to a boss, to rent yourself out to a boss, technological advancement leads to poverty. And what I'm describing about self-driving cars happens all throughout the economy. Technological advancement leads to poverty. This is a built-in problem of capitalism. It's called overproduction. It's called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Capitalism has this problem where technological advancement leads to poverty, and it cannot overcome this problem. And so we now have a global high-tech economy where the ability to create wealth is more efficient than ever before, but they need fewer and fewer people at the assembly line. I do appreciate it, and I'll be answering all the super chats and Rumble rants in the second half. Thank you, Sarah. And we have this global high-tech economy where there's millions of people that have no place at the assembly line. We have this global high-tech economy where the ability to produce products is more efficient than ever before. We need fewer workers than ever before. But the ability of the worker to buy the products is constantly decreasing because there's no place for him at the global assembly line. The ability to produce wealth is greater than ever before, but poverty is also greater than ever before. And this is not rational. But there's a big section of the world that doesn't have this problem. They don't have this problem in China. They don't have this problem in Russia. They don't have this problem in Venezuela. They don't have this problem in Iran. They don't have this problem in Nicaragua. They don't have this problem in Cuba. They don't have this problem in Vietnam. Vietnam, go and read. There's a great article put out by the World Business Forum about Vietnam's economic miracle. And in Vietnam, they've had all kinds of computer technological advancement. They upgraded the economy, and Vietnam has gotten richer and richer and richer. And in China, they're making huge breakthroughs in computer technology. They've got Huawei technologies, the phone manufacturer, telecommunications corporation. But they have planned economies. They have economies where profits are not in command. And because of that, they don't have this problem. And wealth can advance, and technology can become more efficient, and the population doesn't get poorer at the same time because profits are not in command. They have in China an economy. That's funny. I'm just getting to that. They have an economy where the means of production, the centers of economic power, are controlled by all of society and organized in order to advance the wealth of all of society. Profits are not in command. And as the alternative economy around the world, where profits are no longer in command, is rising, the only hope that the imperialists have for staying on the top is war and degrowth. And that's what the World Economic Forum depopulation agenda is about, Mitch. In order to save their system, they want to make us pay. They want everyone to have less and everyone to be poorer to resolve a crisis of capitalism. Because their system can't function with all this new technology, because the world is continuing to rise and sections of the planet have broken free from their dominion, they are trying to forcibly degrow the economy so they can stay at the top. And that's what fascism has always been. Fascism is an attempt to save capitalism with degrowth. Malthusianism is the idea that the problems of the global economy are not caused by capitalism and its instability. They're not caused by imperialism. Rather, it's caused by overpopulation. The British Empire, they used to talk about useless eaters. There's too many useless eaters in Africa. The reason people in Africa are poor is because they have too many children. Right? Winston Churchill forcibly starved millions of people in India. And he said, well, it's their fault. The damn Indians have too many children. And since the 1800s, the ultra-rich, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies have been saying that the way to save capitalism from the problem of overproduction is to depopulate the planet, to reduce the population. There's a member of the British royal family who actually said that he hoped that he could be reincarnated as a deadly virus that would go all over the world and kill people to save the population. Bill Gates is obsessed with the concept of overpopulation. Barack Obama went to Africa and told a room full of African youth that if everybody on this continent has a home and a car and a refrigerator, I mean, this planet will overheat. We can't have that. Look, I'm the president of the United States. We can't have people on this continent get richer. We just can't do it. I'm Barack Obama. I mean, it's insane. And all of the World Economic Forum, all of their sinister schemes about you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it. You'll live in a pod and you'll eat bugs. All of that is an attempt to save capitalism from the crisis created by technological advancement. That is what the World Economic Forum is. That's what globalism is. That's what the lockdowns were about. They used the lockdowns to stave off an economic crisis. The stock market was crashing. And then, in the name of COVID and whatever, they locked down the global economy and they had a controlled demolition. And the economy did really, really badly, but it was controlled and regulated. They didn't have a free fall economic collapse like happened in 2008. Instead, they had a controlled demolition in the name of COVID lockdowns. They had a controlled, stabilized demolition. And this is what the ultra rich have been talking about for the longest time. Fascism and degrowth are rooted in an attempt to save the capitalist system from itself, from the problem of overproduction, from the problem of technological advancement. The ultra rich are sitting there and hiring academics and smart people to think of how can they stabilize the economy. You have to think of it like a game of King of the Mountain. You ever play King of the Mountain? When I was a kid, we used to play King of the Mountain. There'd be a little hill, and we'd try to get to the top of the hill and push other people, and we'd get to the top of the hill. Well, basically what's happening is the imperialists, the British bankers and Wall Street and the ultra rich and the Silicon Valley elite, they're already at the top of the hill. And now they're saying humanity must stop growing. Technological progress must stop. Human growth and advancement must stop because we're at the top of the hill already. And that is what they are doing. In an attempt to stay at the top, the only way they can stay at the top is if they stop development around the world. They beat down Russia. They beat down China. They beat down the African continent. They beat down South America. And in all the areas that are already under their dominion, they forcibly drive everyone down. And sometimes they do that with austerity, with cuts in social benefits, cutting food stamps, cutting subsidies for college, cutting aid to low-income mothers, cutting government jobs and services. And in other places, they do it with forcible measures, lockdowns, environmental regulations, restrictions on the amount of electricity that can be used, restrictions on the amount of water and gasoline that can be used. But it's all to save their system. That's what it's about. The system that they rule, imperialism, capitalism in its monopolistic stage, this system where the world is dominated by a few big banks and corporations based in Western countries, this system of imperialism is dying because it cannot handle the computer revolution. It cannot handle technological advancement. And so in the hopes of saving their system, they are trying to lock down at home fascism, and they are trying to escalate their attacks on Russia and China and Venezuela and Iran, war. That is the only hope they have for their system, to save their system, fascism and war. However, there is a rising block of opposition around the world, and there are millions and millions of people like you and me that live in America and Britain and France and Germany. And we don't want to accept their high-tech dark ages. We don't want to be poor. We don't want to own nothing and be happy about it. We don't want to eat bugs. We don't want to have low wages. We don't want our neighborhoods to fall apart. We don't want our bridges to collapse. We don't want to have less electricity. And so we're fighting back. And right now, the main force that is fighting back are the lower levels of capital, are the capitalists that are not part of the club. All right. Right now, it tends to be the lower levels of capital, the small business owners. Look at the people that are supporting Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump had a lot of billionaires in his cabinet who supported him, but they were all billionaires that are not part of the club. Who was supporting Donald Trump? It was My Pillow, that My Pillow guy, Betsy DeVos. And she's a billionaire, but her money comes from the Tupperware, Amway, multi-level marketing scheme, right? Who else? Who else was supporting Donald Trump? Eric Prince of Blackwater, a low-level, weapons manufacturer, a private military contractor. I mean, the people that were supporting Donald Trump were not the ultra-rich. It wasn't the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the DuPonts. It wasn't Bill Gates. It wasn't the ultra-rich. It was the lower levels of capital that don't want to accept the degrowth scheme of the ultra-rich to stabilize the system. They just want to make money. And right now, they are the main force that is resisting the ultra-rich. However, they can't do it. They're not going to succeed. They're not going to succeed because they don't have the population on their side. At the end of the day, the working class must fight back. Let me repeat that. The working class must fight back. At the end of the day, it will only be the working class, the millions and millions of Americans who sell their labor power, who go to work every day and worry about how they're going to feed their kids. That is who needs to be in motion. And it's about time that the lower levels of capital that realize that degrowth is going to ruin them enter an alliance with the working class. We need the working class to fight back. We need the working class to mobilize. We need millions and millions of working class people in motion to demand jobs and wages and infrastructure and better schools and better jobs. We need a working class movement. And that working class movement needs to be in alliance with Russia and China and Venezuela and Iran and all the countries that are fighting the imperialists around the world. We must build an anti-monopoly coalition. The small business owners, the lower level capitalists, the working class, the people that want peace with Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela. We need to form a block of resistance here in the United States against the imperialists. We need all of society that wants growth, all of society that wants better economic conditions, all of society that will not accept their high-tech dark ages, that will not accept their impoverishment to save their system, will not accept their agenda of war, will not accept the low-wage police state they are trying to impose. We need all of society to unify with the working class, which is the overwhelming majority of the American people, people who sell their labor power, people who go to work. That's the overwhelming majority of this country, with the working class in the lead of an anti-monopoly coalition to defeat the imperialists, the huge corporations, the big banks that dominate the United States, that drive U.S. foreign policy, that are setting up an international low-wage police state, that are trying to forcibly degrow in order to save their system. They must be defeated by an anti-monopoly coalition. We must build a block of resistance and defeat the imperialists. And so when you hear MAGA people talking about globalism and how the country is falling apart economically and how they don't like the sinister managerial schemes of the ultra rich, they don't like the idea of being degrown and owning nothing and being happy about it. When you hear other people talk about how they don't like having their lives regulated, they don't like being surveilled by the government, they don't like having their employer tell them what political views they're allowed to have and what political views they're not allowed to have. They don't like the idea that they're going to be in debt for the rest of their lives. The idea that they can't own a house. They have no hope for ever owning their own home. They don't like the idea of the next generation facing student debt for the rest of their lives. They don't like the idea of their neighborhood not having paved roads and the water not being properly purified while the government dumps billions and billions of dollars to antagonize and have war with Russia and attack Russia and Ukraine. They don't like having billions and billions of dollars spent to enable Israel to murder Palestinians around the clock while our own country is falling apart. What they're talking about when they complain about globalism is imperialism, capitalism in its monopoly stage. That's what they are complaining about. They're complaining about a system where the profits of huge multinational corporations come before people. And they're complaining about a system that many countries around the world have broken free from. And there is an economic boom happening. I've been to Russia. They're having an economic boom in Russia right now. They're having a farming boom. They are having a computer revolution. Russia is surging forward economically. The USA has tried to wreck their economy and failed. China's economy is booming right now. All over Eurasia, in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, you go out to the Far East, Vladivostok, there's an economic explosion happening. The parts of the world that have broken out of capitalism and imperialism, that have adopted a system where the economy is rationally organized, are growing and expanding, and life expectancy is getting longer, and electrical power plants are being created, and schools are being created, and children are being raised to become engineers and scientists and doctors. And there is an economic explosion happening right now in the parts of the world that have broken out of the irrational, imperialist, globalist, capitalist system. And we here in the United States must do the same thing. We must break out of imperialism. We should demand a government that works for the people in our neighborhoods and in our communities, not for the international bankers that want to tear down Russia and continue the war in Ukraine. We should demand a government that wants to feed our kids and build up the economy of our country, not to enable the Zionist criminals in Israel to murder Palestinians around the clock. We should demand a government that fights for jobs and schools and housing and education and an improvement of the lives of the American people, not the defense of an international system that is impoverishing the whole world. We should demand that the idea that the government should just roll over and give Wall Street whatever it wants. No, we should demand a government of action that fights for working families. We need a government of action that will kick Jeff Bezos' ass, that will roll right over Bill Gates, that'll knock down the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, and the sinister Silicon Valley fascists. We need a government that'll kick George Soros out the door and fight for us. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government that will build and construct in this country and not kill and tear down in some other country. We need a government that wants to see our life expectancy expand, not decrease. We need a government that doesn't want us to live in a pod. We want a government that wants us to live in a mansion. We want a government that doesn't want our kids to die from opioids or to die, get medicated on drugs and fade into nothing. We need a government that wants to raise our kids to be scientists and doctors and engineers. We need a government that will design a social media app that makes people happier and smarter and more well-adjusted, not more socially awkward, not more unconfident, not more insecure. We need a government that will hire the smartest engineers and the smartest scientists to start building high-speed railway across this country, not designing new drones to murder people in Africa and Asia. We need a government that is loyal to the population of this country, most in particular the working class, and is powerful enough to stand up against the rich. And what we are seeing now with MAGA, with libertarianism, this is the confused beginnings of what could lead in that direction. But it won't lead in that direction if we don't take action. Because without those of us who understand the nature of reality, without us who understand the nature of the economy, what's this going to lead to? Libertarianism. Oh, if we just privatize everything, that'll be great. Oh, if we just, privatize, cut all government services, let the corporations do whatever they want, that'll make everything fine. That's not going to work. Libertarians believe in austerity. And the synthetic left believes in degrowth. And you know what, folks? Austerity and degrowth are the same goddamn thing. Let me repeat that. Austerity, which is what libertarians believe in, cutting government services, cutting wages, deregulating, and degrowth, which is what the left believes in, forcing with state power people to live in greater poverty, forcing people to use less resources, forcing people to live in it's the same thing. It's making us pay for the crisis that they created. That's what it is. Austerity and degrowth are the same goddamn thing. It is making us pay for what they did. It is their system that is failing around the world. It is their system that has no place for us at the assembly line. It is their irrational system where self-driving cars would lead to poverty. They have created the crisis with their greed and with their sinister schemes. And whether you call it degrowth and you force it with the government, or whether you call it austerity and you do it with privatizations and cutbacks, it's the same thing. It is making us pay for what they did. And I reject that. I oppose all attempts to make the workers pay for what the imperialists have done. I reject that. If they want to go eat bugs and live in a pod, they can do that. If they want to have no schools and no healthcare and no education, they can do that. But I believe in bettering and improving the conditions of mankind. I believe in technology. I believe in advancement. I believe in increasing the population, not decreasing the population. I believe that we need a government of action to fight for working families. Folks, I like Huey Long. You ever hear of Huey Long? Let's put some Huey Long on. This was a great American politician. I am going to put Huey Long. Huey Long was the governor of Louisiana in the 1930s, and he was one of the greatest politicians that America has ever had, ever seen. I'm going to put Huey Long on the screen here. Huey Long, right? This was Huey Long. Here, let me just put the video on. This was a great politician who fought for the working class, who fought against big business. He built an anti-monopoly coalition in the state of Louisiana. Louisiana was a very poor state, and it was under the domination of the Standard Oil Company. And so he built an alliance of the small business owners and the workers and the farmers, and he kicked the ass of Standard Oil and used it to build roads and schools and all kinds of great developments in the state of Louisiana. His slogan was every man a king, but none shall wear a crown. Every man a king. This was Huey Long. Huey Long.
According to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with. Now, how are you going to feed the balance of the people? What's Morgan and Baruch and Rockefeller and Mellon going to do with all that grub? They can't eat it. They can't wear the clothes. They can't live in the house. Give them a yacht. Give them a palace. Send them to Reno and give them a new wife when they want it. If that's what they want. But when they've got everything on the God's living earth that they can eat and they can wear and they can live in, and all that their children can live in and wear and eat and all their children's children can use, then we got to call Mr. Morgan and Mr. Mellon and Mr. Rockefeller back and say, come back here. Put that stuff back on this table here that you took away from here, that you don't need. Leave something else for the American people to consume. And that's the program. We're not going to destroy the Gulf Refining Company. We're not going to destroy the Standard Oil Company. But we're going to say that the limit of any one man's stock ownership in the Standard Oil Company is from $3 to $5 million to that individual, and that the balance of the people of America own the balance of what the Standard Oil Company is worth. All right. Then we start from the bottom, that the 25 or more million American families shall have a homestead, a home, and the comforts of a home, including an automobile and a radio, the things it takes in that house to live on. We say to America, 125 million, none shall be too big, none shall be too poor, none shall work too much, none shall be idle. No luxurious mansions empty, none walking the streets, none impoverished, none in pestilence, none in want, but in the land blessed by the smile of the Creator, with everything to be consumed, to be eaten, to be worn, that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
All right, folks. Very good. So names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us here tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? I will call you all out as I see you. I see on Rumble, we got a few people and plenty of people here on YouTube. Jenny in Cincinnati is with us. Welcome. Utica, New York, Mark Jones. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got Auckland, New Zealand, Kiwi Corner 888. We got Andy from Glasgow, Patch in Arizona, Suni from Tampa, Florida, Alex in Oregon, Tomas in the Netherlands, Bob in Troy, New York, Alex in Brazil, Al in Sydney, Alex in Brazil, Saviero in Mexico, Detroit, Anthony, Norway, and Nick, Mitch in the Republic of Texas, Mariah in North Carolina says Happy Easter. We're not there yet. We still got Good Friday. Monterey, Mexico, Sarah in Joseph, Oregon, Ian Chester in England, Kieran from San Diego, Toronto, Nick J., Kristen from Iceland, Kiwi Craig from Western Australia, Zach in Tennessee, Lance Stone in New York, Dan Niswander in Southern California, Michael Kennedy from England, Bill Preston says hello, Patrick in Maine, David Fox in Bendigo, Australia, San Diego, California, Jorge Fernandez from Brooklyn, John McCarthy in Chicago, Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. We got Emperor Penguin in Texas. We got Cologne, Germany. We got Just a Maverick. We got AI from London. Red in Groyton, Connecticut. Welcome, Red. Good to have you with us, Red. Briggy is with us. Briggy out in Pennsylvania. She Talks, South Dakota. Welcome, Lee. Lee is out in She Talks, South Dakota. I've never been to She Talks. There we go. Russia, Krasnodar, Micah in Las Vegas, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Texas, right? Texas. Caleb, great lecture earlier. You should be going all over the nation. Thank you. I do my best. We got Sarah, Ivan from Peru. Welcome, Ivan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Micah in Las Vegas. Very, very, very good. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. And we got a good number of super chats that have come in, which I do appreciate. But if anyone else can send a super chat, that would be appreciated, because I do live in New York City for my job. I am required to live in this very expensive city. And in order to do these broadcasts, I have to have an extra room. I have to have an extra studio, a home studio, basically. I have to have an office, so I'm not fighting with my wife over the living room. And so in order to do that, I have to pay some ridiculously insane rent. You do not want to know what my rent is. So I do appreciate the super chats. They help support the channel. Or if you would like, you can buy the books that we publish. Like, this is our latest book. Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? Right? You buy the books, you send the super chats. Chris in Salt Lake City, another communist majoritarian out in Salt Lake City. Arkham Asylum, Gotham. The Joker is watching. Grange Sands, United Kingdom. But yeah, if you can send super chats, the super chats get me talking. They make content for the second half of the show. They also support the work that we do here on this channel. It's appreciated. And if you want to support our channel on Patreon, that is appreciated as well. I'm going to do another patrons only stream on the 1st of April, because I do a patrons only stream. I do them every 1st of the month. So join on Patreon. And let me add that the Center for Political Innovation, which is the political organization that I am the ideological leader of, we have other people. Elizabeth Young is the president. We have other people on the boards of directors. I have no access to their funds. So if you donate to them, I don't have access to that money. CPI money goes to do CPI stuff, right? It goes to fund CPI activities, etc. And we'd love for you to join. It's only $10 a month to join CPI. We have 151 members at this point, 151 members throughout the country. And the Center for Political Innovation is a great organization. We're about to have a workshop, a national education workshop in Vermont. So we'd love to have you come to that if you'd like to come join us. It's going to be a great workshop in Vermont. It's going to be 4 days of education, meeting anti-imperialists, learning about how we can build an organization to save the country from the crisis that we're in, how we can intervene in the political process to to get to a better place. We'd love to have you join us at that national workshop. And thank you, Jorge. And we'd love to have you there. So if you'd like to come to our workshop, please just go ahead and register. This is the link to register and come to the workshop. 4 days in Vermont. That's one thing you can do. Or you can just support this channel. There are many things you can do. We are always doing different things to spread these ideas. I have finished, but we're finishing up, the new textbook that we're going to release at the upcoming retreat. It's going to be a very long textbook. It might be 1,000 pages, right? I mean, it's going to be a very long textbook we're publishing on the history of socialism and anti-imperialism in the United States. So on that note, folks, I'm going to start answering people's super chats. A very good question. All right. Okay. Can you please debunk the new left myth that socialism is simply workers owning the means of production? Okay. Well, here's the thing. What does that mean? Workers owning the means of production, right? Because to some people, that's an employee stock ownership program. My understanding is that, if you work at General Motors or Chrysler, some of the money that you get paid is from a stock option. So you're a co-owner of the company, right? Now, you don't own as much as the CEO does or the major shareholders on the board, but you're technically an owner. So is that socialism? No, it's not. Socialism, you could say, is workers controlling the means of production, but not in that crude sense. Capitalism is production organized for profit. The private owners own the centers of economic power, and they then operate them to maximize profits for themselves. Socialism is when society as a whole, led by the working class majority, takes control of the means of production. And then the means of production no longer function according to profits, but they are forced by society as a whole to work in the interests of society as a whole. So is that the workers controlling the means of production? Yes, but not on an individual level, on a macro level. It is the bulk of society, which the majority of humanity, the overwhelming majority, are the working class, taking control of the government and then using the government to control the economy so that growth is no longer restrained. Let's pull up the Communist Manifesto, right? It's funny. The Communist Manifesto, it's a pretty basic document. But if you want a refutation of all this synthetic left bullshit that says socialism is just when I start a worker cooperative with my friends. No. What does the Communist Manifesto say? Chapter 2 of the Communist Manifesto, right? Here we go. The first step in the revolution is the working class to raise the working class is to raise the proletariat, that's the working class, to the position of the ruling class and win the battle for democracy. Win the battle for democracy, defeating the ultra-rich, making the working class the majority, the ruling class. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degree all capital from the bourgeoisie and centralize all instruments of production into the hands of the state, and to increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. So, political supremacy, meaning that the government is taken over, a mass movement of the people, in which the working class are the clear majority. The people take control of the government. And they, with their political supremacy, with their control of the government, they then use the government to centralize the instruments of production, to force the economy to work in a rational way, to centralize the instruments of production. And then what do they do when they centralize the instruments of production? It says to centralize the instruments of production to increase the total productive forces, to increase the wealth. No longer, if you centralize the means of production, this problem created by poverty being created by abundance, the irrationality of profits goes away, and because you've centralized them. And once you've centralized them, you then raise the productive forces. So it is workers controlling the means of production, but not on an individual scale, on a macro scale. It is the entire working class controlling the entire means of production. It's not, I started a pencil factory where we share the profits. That's not what it is, right? And the problem with the worker cooperative thing is that worker cooperatives are still profit sharing entities. They still operate on the basis of profit. And if they're not part of a central plan, they will compete with other worker cooperatives. They will take moves that will, maximize their own profits. There's many problems. The problem of technology eliminating jobs, right? If you work at a corporation and there's 10 of you and you're dividing everything equally, you're not going to want to hire an 11th person, because then you're going to get less of a share. You're getting a 10th of the profits. And then they hire, person number 11, and now you're only getting an 11th of the profits. So you're going to want to have technology to have as few employees as possible, so your share gets as big as it possibly can get. The problems of production oriented for profit are not simply that it's not fair. And this is a critique I have of different people. This is a big thing, right? They have thought of a million ways to not talk about imperialism. And I talked about this on the podcast with Jyoti and Harpal Brar today. If you are a Marxist, a socialist, a communist, an a revolutionary in our time, you have to fight imperialism. That's what you have to do. There is a global system of monopoly capitalism, the rule of the world by big banks and corporations based in Western countries that are holding back development, that are keeping the world poor so that they can stay rich. Fighting that system is what we should be doing. And the worker cooperative thing, and Trotskyism, and anarchism, and anarcho-feminism, and wokeism, and identity politics, they have invented a million ways to not fight imperialism. And it's all bullshit. Everything is fighting imperialism. Okay? And synthetic leftism, wokeism, Trotskyism, anarchism, social democracy, whatever you want to call it, it's all, they've invented all kinds of ways to not fight imperialism. And if you're not fighting imperialism, you're not doing your job. It's about fighting imperialism. And that's it. That's it. Fighting imperialism will raise productive forces. Fighting imperialism will empower women. Fighting imperialism will empower Black people. Fighting imperialism will empower workers. Fighting imperialism will eliminate poverty. Fighting imperialism will solve environmental problems. Fighting imperialism will solve inequality. It's all about fighting imperialism. And if you're not fighting imperialism, you're not talking about Marxism, Leninism, and you're not helping at this point. There is a globalist imperialist system that is trying to set up a low-wage police state that is keeping the world poor and making it poorer in order to stay rich. And if you ain't fighting that system, you're wasting your fucking time, right? And we just have to be real about that. Trotskyism, anarchism, the worker co-op thing, woke identity politics, whatever it is, if it's not fighting imperialism, it's not worth our time. It's just that simple, right? And that all synthetic leftism, all of it, no matter what it is, no matter what brand it is, all of it basically gets down to don't fight imperialism. Don't fight imperialism, fight workers who are racist. Don't fight imperialism, fight men. Don't fight imperialism, save up your money to start a worker cooperative with your friends. Don't fight imperialism, cancel people on social media who are transphobic. Don't fight imperialism, fight religious people. Don't fight imperialism, fight your parents. Don't fight fight imperialism. Fight imperialism. Fighting imperialism does mean fighting for the rights of workers on the job. Amazon workers. Amazon is a global imperialist corporation. Fighting imperialism means demanding jobs in schools and healthcare in your neighborhood. Fighting imperialism means, opposing police state repression. But if you're not fighting imperialism, if you're fighting people who are wrong, if you're engaging in some kind of weird profit-sharing enterprise, if you are fighting the right wing. What is this right wing I've heard about? There's this, this is one thing, leftists. I'm so over. I am not a leftist, by the way. And at this point, it used to be I would say I was the true left. I'm at the point I don't left, right, bullshit, right? I am an anti-imperialist. I am a socialist. I'm an anti-imperialist, but I'm not left, because I have heard my whole life, all these old leftists, they're always talking about the right wing. There's the right wing. What is the right wing? What is it? There's this evil, scary thing called the right wing. And if you do something that's fighting imperialism, but it's connected to the right wing, you can't do it. What is the right wing, right? I mean, what is it? What is this evil, scary right wing that I'm not allowed to associate with? Because, the people that were cheering when Gaddafi was murdered in Zuccotti Park, they were not part of the right wing, but they were my enemies. I was in Zuccotti Park the day Gaddafi was killed, the leader of Libya, the guy who raised millions of his people out of poverty, who made Libya the most prosperous country in the African continent. I was in Occupy Wall Street Park the day he died. And some of the people in the park, like me, were sad about it. And some of the people in the park were happy about it. And the people that were happy about it were leftists, Trotskyites, professional NGO liberal activists who know all about, white identity politics, mansplain, whatever, but they supported murdering Gaddafi. So they're my enemies. And many of the people who didn't support killing Gaddafi were libertarians, Alex Jones fans, people who supported Gaddafi because he was creating an independent African currency or whatever. And, they liked Gaddafi because he promoted gun ownership, because they've been listening to Alex Jones talk about how good Gaddafi was. Well, you know what? Those people who were supporting Gaddafi, many of them were probably connected to this evil, scary thing called the right wing. Bum, bum, bum. Well, I don't care. They were on the same side as me in Libya, and the left wing wasn't. And I keep seeing this over and over again, right? I mean, the left wing wants more lockdowns. The left wing wants you to go to jail for tweeting wrong, wants you to lose your job if anyone in your family questions the transgender thing, right? I mean, the left wing, the PSL, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, which is supposedly a left-wing party, their platform literally calls for eliminating the electricity of the United States, completely shutting down the power grid, replacing every fossil fuel power grid in this country immediately with windmills and solar panels. They want genocide. They want America to have a third of the electricity it has. I don't want that. I don't care if you're left wing or right wing. If you want to take electricity away from American families in the name of environmentalism, I don't support you. I don't care if you're left wing or right wing or head wing or bottom wing. I don't care what you are. Right? If you want to take electricity from American working families, I don't support you. If you cheer when Gaddafi gets murdered and an African country gets reduced to instability and chaos because of human rights, I am not on your side. And if somebody's against killing Gaddafi, and if someone's against deindustrializing the country, I'm with you. I'm on the same side. And I don't care if you're part of the right wing. Look, I mean, the Korean Peninsula, great example of that, right? The left wing, the Korean American left wing organization wouldn't allow the Center for Political Innovation to march with them for peace on the Korean Peninsula. But the Unification Church, who are part of the right wing, they did. So, I mean, I don't know, like, where should we go, right? There's one group of people that wants to march with us for peace on the Korean Peninsula. And there's another group of people that says we can't come to their march because you're right wing. I mean, who should we support, right? I mean, I'm at the point where, left wing, right wing, I want to work for peace. I want to support people around the world that are struggling against imperialism. I want economic development. I want socialism. And I'm tired of hearing about the right wing. And I'm tired of hearing about having any loyalty to the left. I'm not loyal to the left, and I don't have a stigma against the right, but I'm for socialism. Right? So there you go. There you go. All righty. All righty. Next question. Sarah says, how do you bring oligarchs within the law without global government? Unless there are sovereign states working together globally, there will be forces outside the law profiting from exploiting others. Well, when we talk about global government, we're opposed to the International Criminal Court, which is a completely bullshit organization. We are opposed to the World Bank, etc. But the idea that there should be international standards, right? I mean, the right of countries to not be invaded, right? I mean, that's the UN Charter, right? It protects countries from threats of war and threats of aggression. You'll notice that it doesn't apply to the United States, right? The USA threatens countries all the time. The USA invaded Iraq for absolutely no reason, with no provocation whatsoever. But in theory, right, the idea that countries should respect each other's sovereignty, the idea that countries should cooperate with each other against terrorist groups and drug gangs, nothing inherently wrong with that, right? I'm not opposed to international law in concept, but the way this so-called rules-based global order that the Western leaders are talking about is not good for anybody. And it's not about economic development, and it's not about fighting big corporations. It's about carrying out the will of big corporations around the world. There is going to be a global community, and we're coming together as a people, but we have to respect countries' sovereignty, and it needs to be a global community where the rights of all are respected, and Western corporations don't get to just do whatever they want, right? And that the Western leaders have made a farce out of international law. They have made a farce out of international institutions, and that's reprehensible. But the idea of countries working together against terrorism, the idea of countries cooperating in a way that respects national sovereignty, I don't think is inherently wrong. So there we go. I hope that answers your question, Sarah. What is your opinion of the World Economic Forum development agenda? My opinion of it is that it is an attempt to save capitalism with degrowth. It is fascism, is what it is. It is an attempt to save capitalism by forcibly driving down the population, forcibly impoverishing people, trying to make the workers pay what the capitalists did, what the crisis that they created. That's what it is. And I am not in favor of that, right? I don't think that we should have less people. I think we should have more people. I don't think we should have a lower life expectancy. I think we should have a bigger life expectancy. I think that the people of the world deserve a better life, and that we shouldn't be impoverished to save their system. Just because their irrational system leads to a situation where technology leads to greater poverty, that shouldn't lead to poverty for the rest of us. So there we go. Caleb, maybe a show topic, but I have followed the Soviet Battle of Manchuria. I understand the Soviets went through and liberated Korea. So how did the U.S. get into the Korean War, and how was the Korean War begun? Well, very good, Craig. Here we go. So at the end of the Second World War, the Soviet troops had liberated the northern half of the Korean Peninsula, and the bottom half of the Korean Peninsula had not yet been liberated by Soviet troops. Atomic bombs were dropped on Japan. Japan surrendered. So the idea was that they were going to have elections for the entire peninsula, where every country, every political party would be represented, and there would be an election for the entire peninsula. But in the South, a guy named Syngman Rhee overthrew the elected governments and established himself as the military dictator with the backing of the United States. And the main reason he did that was the USA said they would not give aid to any country where the Communist Party was in office. If the Communist Party was in office, they wouldn't give any aid to the country. And Syngman Rhee and a number of Korean folks that were anti-communist were afraid that if they had elections for the entire peninsula where every political party was allowed to participate, that America wouldn't give them any aid. And so Syngman Rhee seized control of the government in South Korea. And then there were people on Jeju Island who were communists largely, who started protesting for free elections, demanding free elections, and they were brutally massacred. You can read about the massacre at Jeju Island, right? Let me give you a link. Massacre Jeju Island. A massacre at Jeju Island. A horrendous massacre that happened in South Korea. And, and there was this horrendous massacre where this whole island of people that were protesting for the right to vote for the Communist Party were killed. Now, we don't know who fired the first shot, right? But you have to remember, Korea is one country. Like North Korea and South Korea, we now have this concept that there's two countries on the Korean Peninsula. That didn't exist back then. There was one Korea back then. It had been liberated, differently. The war had ended and there were different governments. So in light of the Jeju Island massacre, it looks like, but we don't know. It looks like it's possible the South Korean forces shot the first shot. We don't know. Regardless, North Korea said, all right, you're not going to allow free elections and you're killing people, you're murdering people that are protesting for free elections. We're going to move in and protect our comrades in the South against this authoritarian government, this military dictatorship set up by Syngman Rhee in the South. So North Korea moved in to try and protect the people of South Korea and their right to have free elections. At which point, the United States then sent its forces to the Korean Peninsula. And you had the Korean War. And that's how the Korean War started. What's interesting is, talking about the Battle of Manchuria and all of that, right? Kim Il-sung was the like a folk hero. He was like a Robin Hood figure in South Korea. He was not a member of any party. He eventually joined the Communist Party, but he was not a member of any party. And when they merged the different resistance parties, there were three different political parties. There was the Korean Communist Party, the Korean Social Democratic Party, and the Korean Christian Party. And they all merged into forming the Korean Workers' Party. And Kim Il-sung, who was the leader of the resistance movement, he was the leader of the Korean, Workers' Party, and they formed the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north, and there was the Republic of Korea in the south. And, at this point, all North Korea has ever asked for is they have reunification, one government for the entire peninsula. So there you go. All right. Wikipedia, 10 steps of genocide, insert MAGA. Okay. 10 steps of genocide, Wikipedia, right? All right, the 10 stages of genocide, and then insert MAGA. So are you arguing that MAGA is being genocided, or are you arguing that MAGA is about creating genocide? Right, so it says classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, extermination, denial. I tend to be sympathetic to MAGA Americans who've been canceled. I think the January 6th sentences, they should free every single one of those January 6th people, because that was set up by the government. That was a false flag, and they shouldn't go to jail, right? And I don't necessarily agree with what they did, but there should be a blanket amnesty for all the January 6th inmates. But are you alleging that MAGA is advocating genocide? Or are you advocating that they want a genocide against MAGA? I don't know what you're getting at. I will say that MAGA are not treated fairly because they're at odds with the interests of American imperialism, right? The imperialists decided, even though Donald Trump did a lot of awful things that were on behalf of the imperialist system, like murdering Qasem Soleimani, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, like sending lethal aid, lethal weapons to Ukraine. Regardless, they still have decided that Trump isn't pro-imperialist enough, that he's not working enough in the interest of the imperialists. And so they have decided to, they drove him out of office, and then they did the false flag on January 6th, where informants, they set up, a media hysteria around people walking into the Capitol, most of whom were just like acting like tourists. The police were leading them around. They let them in. The imperialists have decided they don't want Donald Trump back in office. Well, it's looking to me like Trump might be the lesser of two evils at this point. Trump was bad, but he wasn't anywhere near as bad as Biden, right? And Kamala Harris, my goodness, I did a stream yesterday about how bad she is. And, in the lead up to the elections, I've got a lot more to say about Kamala Harris. So, there you go. All right. Global elites are the enemy. They are intimidating their population with a potential Russian threat while seeking to expand their dictation on the world population. Putin. Well, he's right about that. Putin is absolutely right about that. I had the honor of being in the same room as the Russian president, and he is totally right. In the name of opposing Russia, Russia's coming to get us, blah, blah, blah. In the name of that, they are violating our rights. Yeah, I mean, they are escalating attacks on different countries around the world. Putin is 100% correct on that point. I could not agree with him more, right? They are intimidating their population with a potential Russian threat while seeking to expand their dictation on the entire world. Yep. Yes, sir. Wasn't Huey Newton named after Huey Long? Well, John, I saw that super chat come in. And I thought we might as well just take it right from the horse's mouth. This is Huey Newton's autobiography. And I will read you what he says about why his parents named him Huey. So here we go. Story time with Caleb. This is the autobiography of Huey Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party. All righty. And it's in chapter 1. He talks about from hence he got his name. Let me just find it here. Chapter 1. It's been a while since I've read this. But there we go. Part 1. All righty. Okay. His father was a pastor. Here we go. This is on page 11. He says, I was born in Monroe, Louisiana on February 17th, 1942, the last of 7 children. Like other Black people of that time and place, I was born at home. They tell me that my mother was quite sick when she carried me, but my mother says only that I was fine and a pretty baby. My brother and sisters must have agreed because they often teased me when I was young, telling me I was too pretty to be a boy and that I should have been a girl. This baby-faced appearance dogged me for a lifetime, and it was one of the reasons I fought so often in school. I looked younger than I actually was and soft, which encouraged schoolmates to test me. I had to show them. I went to jail in 1968. I still had the baby face. Until then, I rarely shaved. He then says, my parents named me after Huey Pierce Long, the former governor of Louisiana, assassinated 7 years before I came along. Even though he could not vote, my father had a keen interest in politics and followed the campaigns carefully. Governor Long had impressed him by his ability to talk one philosophy while carrying out programs that moved Louisiana in exactly the opposite direction. My father said he was up front looking right into his mouth when Huey P. Long made a speech about how Black men in the hospitals, out of their minds and half naked, had to be cared for by white nurses. This was, of course, unacceptable to Southern whites. And so, therefore, a number of Black nurses were recruited to work in the Louisiana hospitals. This was a major breakthrough in employment opportunities for Black professionals. Huey Long used the tactic to bring along other beneficial programs to Blacks. Free books in the schools, free commodities for the poor, public road and bridge construction projects that gave Blacks employment. While most whites were blinded by Long's outwardly racist philosophy, many Blacks found their lives significantly improved. My father believed that Huey P. Long had been a great man, and he wanted to name a son after him. So there you go. That is why Huey Newton was named after Huey Long, because Huey Long, the governor of Louisiana, enabled Black women to become nurses and provided all kinds of services that benefited the Black community of Louisiana. So that there you have it, from the horse's mouth, from Huey Newton, where he got his name. All righty. Next question. Power to the people. That was a slogan the Black Panthers used. All right. And thank you, Jorge Hernandez. He says nothing, but he sends a super chat to support the program, and we appreciate that, Jorge. What is your take on the IMT organization, the International Marxist Tendency? Thanks. The International Marxist Tendency is a Trotskyite organization. It is headed by Alan Woods, I believe. It was started by Ted Grant, who was a British Trotskyite, and he died. And now it is led by a guy named Alan Woods, if I'm not mistaken. The International Marxist Tendency, they were in Britain. They were a Trotskyist group that joined the Labour Party. Right? In Britain, the major left-wing party is called the Labour Party. And until the 1990s, on paper, the Labour Party claimed to be a socialist party. They had Clause 4 of their bylaws, and Clause 4 said that they wanted to eventually establish a centrally planned socialist economy in Britain. They got rid of Clause 4 in the 1990s. So the International Marxist Tendency in the 1980s, they joined the Labour Party, and they were the Trotskyites inside the British Labour Party, and they got elected to the city council of Liverpool, the city of Liverpool, during the miners' strike. The coal miners of Britain went on strike, and they got elected to the city council because they were heavily involved in supporting the strike, supporting the protests. The International Marxist Tendency is a Trotskyist group, and very briefly, they were close to Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez had a couple meetings with Alan Woods, but they are bad on almost all international issues. They don't support China. They don't support Russia and Ukraine. They're neutral on Palestine. They take the position that they're not against they're for neither Israel or Palestine. The plague on both your houses. They're Trotskyites, right? And Trotskyites are not anti-imperialist, right? Trotskyites, in the name of being against Stalinism, right, in the name of being against Stalinist authoritarianism, they're on the wrong side. And IMT are like that. On the podcast today with Joe T. Brar about Trotskyism, I talked about how Trotskyites divide into three categories. The first type of Trotskyite is what they call the neo-Trotskyites, or third camp Trotskyites. And they tend to be on the college campuses. They tend to focus on LGBT and human rights, and they don't support any socialist countries. And that's what they talk about. And they're college professors. The International Socialist Tendency, there's other groups, so that's the first group. Right? They tend to follow Shachtman or Tony Cliff, the Cliffites. There's the Socialist Workers' Party or Socialist Alternative in Australia, not Socialist Alternative in the U.S., which is a different group. But, they're different groups, but they're Cliffites. They're followers of Tony Cliff or followers of Max Shachtman. And they don't support any socialist country, and they're focused on, social justice kind of issues. They're involved in, human rights protests, etc. That's the first type. Then you've got what you call mainline Trotskyites, and that's the IMT, the International Marxist Tendency. They are Trotskyites who they joined the Labour Party in Britain. In the United States, the IMT, I think they campaigned for Bernie Sanders a whole lot. And they tend to talk about economics, which is to their credit, right? They do talk about labor unions. They do talk about like increasing the wages, etc. But they might pretend to kind of support Cuba or kind of support Venezuela, but not really. They always are finding some reason to condemn these countries and talk about Stalinist bureaucracy, blah, 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 blah. They don't really support these countries, but they kind of say they do. Those are mainline Trotskyites. That's IMT. And then there's a third category, which are called Orthodox Trotskyists. And Orthodox Trotskyists are insane. And Orthodox Trotskyists, that's the Spartacist League. That's the Internationalist Group. That's the World Socialist Website. That's the Posadists, who are all about UFOs and space aliens. And those are the Trotskyists that say crazy things, that they think World War II is still happening because Trotsky said that World War II could only end with global Marxist revolution. So it clearly was still going on. They say they believe in legalizing child rape and things like that because, for crazy reasons I can't even explain. And they're nuts Trotskyists. However, to their credit, World Socialist Website has done a lot to support Julian Assange, and they do oppose aid to Ukraine because they're so, cryptic, and they're so ideological that sometimes they will take positions that put them at odds with U.S. imperialism. But Trotskyism as an ideology is worthless because it's not anti-imperialist. When it really gets down to it, Trotskyists are always on the side of the imperialists. Always. No matter what country you go to, except for some of the weird Orthodox Trotskyists, they're always on the side of the imperialists. If the imperialists are attacking a country, they're attacking a country. If the imperialists are cheering for Ukraine, the Trotskyites are also cheering for Ukraine. If the imperialists are cheering for protesters in Hong Kong, the Trotskyites are also cheering for protesters in Hong Kong. They're not against imperialism, and opposing imperialism is what it's all about. So there we go. All right. That's my opinion of IMT. They're not anti-imperialists, so they're not my comrades, right? And, if they were anti-imperialists, they would be my comrades, right? I mean, that's the thing. I'll work with anyone who's anti-imperialist. I don't care if you're a communist, Muslim, socialist, conservative. I don't care if you're anti-imperialist. But if you ain't anti-imperialist, you're not my comrade. I don't care what you call yourself. And that's the other thing. I have no loyalty to, I'm a communist. I'm a socialist. Most people that call themselves that now are completely worthless. I have more in common with MAGA than I have with most people that call themselves communists. I don't even want to call myself a communist anymore, because it used to be when I told people I was a communist, they'd go, "Oh, what's that? Tell me about it." Now, if I tell people I'm a communist, they say, "Oh, you've got pink hair. Oh, you think that all Republicans are Nazis. Oh, you're in favor of economic degrowth. Oh, and I'm not any of those things. I'm a Christian. I am in favor of economic growth and expansion. I am against the low-wage police state. I don't have pink hair. I'm tired of hearing about the trans thing. I'm just not interested in it. I am in support of Julian Assange. So I don't, at this point, other than people that I'm having very serious conversations with, I don't go around calling myself a communist because it doesn't do any good. Right? We call our organization the Center for Political Innovation because we're innovating, because we're in new ground. We're in new territory, right? And that the communist world has changed a lot, right? China has market mechanisms. They have private corporations, and that was the right thing. Vietnam too, right? The leader of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation is a Christian who believes in God. The leader of Nicaragua, the socialist government of Nicaragua, has Christianity in its constitution, right? Maduro is a Christian, right? The Islamic Revolution of Iran is not communist, but they're on the same side as all the anti-imperialist forces, and they have a centrally planned economy. They call it not capitalism, but Islam, and they're aligned with Russia, and they're aligned with China, and they're really close to Venezuela, and they have a state centrally planned economy that builds, and it's based on Islam, on Shia Islam. So communism is like the foundation of anti-imperialism, but anti-imperialism is much broader than that. I'm an anti-imperialist. That's what I am. I'm with Iran. I'm with Russia. I'm with China. I'm with North Korea. I'm with Cuba. I'm with Venezuela. I'm with Syria. I'm with the Houthis, right? I am with Mugabe in Zimbabwe. I am with Gaddafi. I am with the people fighting the imperialists. And if that makes me a communist, so be it. But nowadays, most of the people running around calling themselves communists in the West are not anti-imperialists. So fuck them, right? And I don't care. I don't care what they call themselves. Oh, I read the same books as you. Well, good for you. You don't get the same thing out of it because I read the book that says never support the imperialists in attacking a country. That's the book that I read. And you read the same book as me, and somehow that leads you to want to support war with Russia. I read the book that says we never support the capitalist government arresting people for what they say and what they believe. And you read the same book and you support jailing Assange because, I heard he tweeted something transphobic. So you can read the same book as me and take something completely different out of it. And it doesn't matter, right? I mean, I am on the opposite side. The woke synthetic left is supporting killing and murdering Julian Assange, and I'm against it. The woke synthetic left supports sending guns to Ukraine, to the Nazis. I'm against it. The woke synthetic left supports the lockdowns that devastated communities in the United States economically. And I'm against it. The woke synthetic left, they support tech censorship and shutting down people's opinions on social media. I'm against it. Right? So, the woke synthetic left believes in degrowth. Well, I'm for growth, not degrowth. Degrowth is fascism, if you actually read R. Palm Dutt. So, these people, these woke people, they can call themselves whatever they want. They're on the opposite side of me on every goddamn issue. All right? I mean, I think that women who disagree with the trans thing and have concerns about bathrooms and about, women's sports or whatever should be welcome, are my comrades, and they make some good points. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the issue to say 100% that they're right, but they make some damn good points. The woke left thinks they all deserve to be beaten up and killed because they disagree on the trans thing. Well, we're on the opposite side. These people, when you say you're a communist in the United States, people think that you're people who disagree with me on every issue. So I can't call myself a communist when it means I'm on the opposite side of these people, right? But what I don't understand, and I don't understand, I understand these people, why they think they're communists, because they're so smug and arrogant. They think they know better than every communist government in the world. That makes sense to me, right? These pink-haired freaks, they think, oh, China's not really communist. I am. People that live in Africa and are in communist parties, they're not really communist. I am, right? Oh, Russia, they're not communist. There's no communists in Russia. That makes sense. They're smug idiots, right? And they think they know better than everybody else. Okay, that I understand. What I don't understand is the MAGA people. The MAGA people, they don't think they're smarter than everybody else. And a lot of them are older, and they know that China is led by a communist party. They know the Soviet Union was led by a communist party. They know Vietnam's led by a communist party. They know North Korea is led by communists. And they know that what they do in China and what they do in Vietnam and what they did in the former Soviet Union, and what they do in Cuba and what they do in Venezuela has absolutely nothing to do with what the woke people are doing. So what I don't understand and what annoys me is that I hear MAGA people constantly trying to claim that the woke people and the global communist movement are the same. They ain't. All right. I was just in Russia at the World Youth Festival, talking to communists from Vietnam, talking to communists from China, talking to communists from Cuba. They are not the same as woke people. And all over the right-wing media, I hear that, right? I mean, I'll just show you a picture here, right? I'll just show you a picture, right? Hold on. I'm just going to put a picture on the screen. Right? This is a group of communist youth in China. This is a group of the Young Communists of China, the official Young Communist Organization of China. Do these kids look woke to you? How many of these kids have pink hair? I don't see a single pink hair in that crowd. How many of these kids have nose piercings? I don't see a single one. How many of those kids are transgender and are experimenting with their gender? I don't see a single one. I don't see a single one. All right? North Korea. Let's do North Korea, right? North Korea is very, very communist country, right? North Korea. Right? It's like a crowd of youth from North Korea, right? Here is a crowd of North Korean youth. Right? We all know the woke people that we don't like. And now here are a crowd of young people from North Korea. Young people from North Korea. Look at this. Do these look like woke people to you? I was at a festival. I met people from North Korea at the festival. They are not woke. And I am really, really tired of hearing conservatives try to equate the woke people that I can't stand, that you can't stand with governments and societies that have absolutely nothing in common with them. And I mean, I understand why the woke people are smug and arrogant, and they think they know communism better. They hate North Korea, they hate China, they hate Cuba. But I don't understand how MAGA people can be that stupid, right? If you think that these North Korean young communists are the same as the woke people in the United States, I don't know what crack you're smoking. I mean, you must be on some of those hallucinogens, right? You must be going to a bad woke psychologist who's prescribing you magic mushrooms, because, I mean, communism around the world is not woke. Those woke people are arrogant shitbags, and they might think they're communists, but the people that are actually doing communism in the world disagree a lot. All right. There we go. All right. We communists are neither left or right. We are communists, Marxists. We are at the forefront of the fight against capitalism and imperialism. We are anti-imperialists. Marxism, Leninism is the foundation, but it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the beginning. It is the foundation, but there's, it's the end. It's not the end. It's the beginning. And we are anti-imperialists, and that's what matters. Are you fighting imperialism? Are you opposing imperialism or not? That's all that matters. So there we go. All right. So Diane Sayre got dragged out of an Obama rally. Let me try to get that video. I think the link that you sent, John, is an account that I'm blocked from. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to download that video, because the person who owns that account, I think, has blocked me, which is childish and makes no sense to me, because I am not their enemy. But I don't think I can open. Oh no, I can. They haven't blocked. They have not blocked me. So it looks like I can open this. Thank goodness. Okay, I thought that person had blocked me. I guess they have not, or they've unblocked me, or whatever. All right. So now I'm downloading that video, and we will watch Diane Sayre, who is a LaRouche candidate. We'll watch her getting dragged out of a rally. All right, we'll do that. Hold on. Okay, very good. All right. Okay, so now I downloaded the video, and now I will put it on the screen. Very, very good. All righty. What is grok? Huh? What the hell? Okay. All right. Obviously, that's not what I'm going for. I don't know what's going on there, John. I tried to download that video, and it said, what is grok or something? Okay. All right. I don't know. Okay. Hold on. Is that the right video? All right. I'm going to try this one more time. Okay. It's Sean McCreesh, anti-war protesters. Okay. I'm going to try to download the video one more time. I don't know why it said, what is grok? I don't know what that is, but I'm going to try one more time to download this video. I'm going to try another app to download the video. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. This one seems to have downloaded it right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So let's. Okay. So now I'll try to put this on the screen again. All right. Wild times. Probably an AD for Twitter's AI grok. Okay. I don't know what that means, but okay. We'll put it on the screen. So this is Diane Sayre getting dragged out of an Obama rally.
I think because I think you've done a good job, and because I think democracy is on the move all around the world. It's not surprising that.
Oh, is that Bill Clinton? Is that who it was? Bill Clinton? Oh no, it's an Obama, Biden, Clinton event. Okay, and she's saying we're going to have a war with Russia and you're all out of your minds. Well, I would agree with her. I hope we don't have a war with Russia, but they are all out of their minds. There we go. What is your opinion of Sir Oswald Mosley? Well, Sir Oswald Mosley was the leader of the British Union of Fascists during the 1930s. He was originally in the British. I guess he was a conservative first. He was in the Conservative Party, and he's from a wealthy family that had like a legacy in British politics. And then he found out about how the Irish people were being killed by the British military, the atrocities against the Irish people. And so he became a Labour Party member, and he crossed the aisle and joined the Labour Party to protest the policies of the Conservative government against the Irish people. He was in the Labour Party, and then he developed a very dramatic economic program to stabilize Britain's economy during the Great Depression, and the Labour Party wouldn't adopt it. So he started his own party that was kind of a socialist party called the Union Party, but they were pro-imperialist. They supported the British Empire. They were not anti-imperialist. They were pro-imperialist. They were pro-colonialism and for the colonies. And it was like a jobs program. He wanted to like kind of stabilize the British economy with a jobs program. And then he and the Communist Party hated each other, and he and the Communist Party started fighting each other. And so his Union Party, they developed their own like militia, right? These guys called black shirts, they were called, that would go and mix it up with the Communist Party and fight the Communist Party. And so the black shirts and the communists fought each other. And so he really hated the communists. The communists really hated him. And then he went to Italy and he made friends with Mussolini. And then he went to Nazi Germany and he made friends with Hitler. And he had his own political party in Britain called the British Union of Fascists. And he was really close to members of the British royal family. And he was pro-Hitler. And he was very anti-communist. And I don't know, he was a fascist. What is interesting is he seems to emphasize the economics of fascism more than other fascists. We think of now when someone walks around calling themselves a fascist, right? We're not talking about fascism is objectively degrowth, capitalism, breaking down, etc. However, fascism, as when people call themselves fascists, generally what they mean is I'm a white supremacist. Generally what they're saying is I'm anti-Semitic. I'm an advocate of white supremacy. I'm a David Duke kind of person. Mosley, if you read his writing, he was racist because Britain was a very racist society. It was the center of a global empire that colonized people. He was anti-Semitic, but if you read his writing, he focuses on economics. Which is interesting, but he was a racist. And after he got out of prison, he, during World War II, he was put in prison for being a Nazi sympathizer, being the leader of a huge political party that was pro-Nazi in Britain. After he got out of prison, his political party he started focused on wanting to deport ethnic minorities. So, Mosley is an interesting character. It goes to show you that during the Great Depression, the economy was so bad. There were different factions in the ruling class, etc. But Oswald Mosley, he was a fascist. Openly. He was the leader of the British Union of Fascists. He was an open fascist. He was an open admirer of Hitler, a big supporter of British imperialism and colonialism. He was critical of free market policies. And he wanted some kind of, at least on paper, he advocated some kind of state-controlled economy. Which is different than people nowadays who call themselves fascists generally are focusing on racism, right? He, at least in the 1930s, his writing tended to focus on like an economic plan to improve Britain. And that's of interest to me. But I don't think he was an admirable figure. He's from a very wealthy background. He built an anti-communist militia that beat up communists. And he was a big supporter of British colonialism and imperialism. Very anti-communist. That's an insult to Oswald Mosley. Okay. Tommy Robinson is just an idiot. Okay. Oswald Mosley, to his credit, he was a very articulate speaker. And he had he could articulate economic ideas very clearly. Tommy Robinson's just a dumb racist. right? I mean, Tommy Robinson's like, I don't like Muslims, all right? And if I see a Muslim, I'm going to beat him up, right? Because we don't like them in our neighborhoods. We're going to beat up these Muslims. They're from another country. They should go back there. You know, I really like the Jewish Defense League because they beat up Muslims, so I'm going to start myself the English Defense League, and we'll beat up Muslims because I's a stupid racist. That's what I am. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm Tommy Robinson. I'm a stupid racist. Tommy Robinson is the dumbest human being. I mean, you know, and it's sad, you know. It's very, very sad, but you know, I mean, you know, I pay attention to the far right to some degree or other, right? You know, there was the guy who was the leader of the BNP for a while. What was his name? Nick Griffin. Nick Griffin, you know, don't agree with him, obviously, but Nick Griffin was a very articulate guy who could very clearly articulate British racial theory. I think people of different races, yeah, he could very clearly express his ideas. But, you know, a lot of these far right guys, you listen to them, they're like the dumbest pieces of shit you've ever met. Like, you know, I think after Nick Griffin was deposed from the British National Party, the guy who took over the BNP was this skinhead. And he got up there and he's like, Zionists, they're loyal to another country called Israel. And they might become my enemy. But I'm British, I am. And right now, the Zionists, they're killing Muslims. That's fine with me. I like anyone who kills me some Muslim. I mean, he's just awful, just a smug. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, and you know, I mean, it's like the Ku Klux Klan in the United States, right? You know, like a decade ago in Minneapolis, was it in Minneapolis or it was in Madison, Wisconsin? Some white supremacists, you know, had a rally. And, you know, I watched the rally on YouTube because I knew the people that were involved in organizing the protests against it. And I was curious what the white supremacists had to say. I think his name was Jeffrey Schopp. He was like a leader of the National Socialist Movement, some big Nazi group. And I listened to the guy's speech and I thought, this man is dumb as shit. Like, I was listening to him and he's up there. He's all like, some people say that the Mexicans have to come to America because their economy is so bad. Well, if their economy's bad, they ought to elect the Nazi Party of Mexico, fix their economy. Don't come here and mess up my country. And I'm just listening. I'm just like, this guy is so dumb. Yeah, you're gonna vote for elect the whites only party of Mexico. Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna get a lot of votes. Have you ever been to Mexico? You think they're gonna elect the Nazi Party of Mexico? I'm just listening. It's like, yeah, you know, it's a crowd of people. Yeah, elect the Nazi Party of Mexico. Don't bother us. Yeah, I'm just like, these are dumb fucking people. Right. And, you know, I mean, one thing that's weird, see, things have gotten weird. See, now, before Charlottesville, before Donald Trump, I remember in the late Cold War normal of America, right? Here we go. You asked me about Oswald Mosley, and I got on a kick. And thank you, Gala, and happy Easter to you. But you got me on a kick. But I remember before Trump, before the economic crisis of 2008, when things were like, quote unquote, normal in the United States before the economy crashed, part of normal America, like 1980s, late Cold War, like 80s America, from like the end of the Bush presidency to back in the 1980s, the way part of the late Cold War normal of America, the age of the neoconservatives and all of that, was that every major city would have a stupid Nazi rally every couple years, right? And I remember in Cleveland when I was a kid. In Cleveland, the Ku Klux Klan of Cleveland got a permit to have a rally in downtown Cleveland. And they talked about it for months on television. And it was, oh my God. And the city of Cleveland bought a tank just to make sure there was no rioting. And they built a huge, elaborate protest cage around them. And 3 Klansmen showed up, 3 of them. And they put on their sheets and 3 guys had a rally. And, you know, and they wore their silly costume with their bed sheets, and they, you know, with thousands and thousands of police around them and a big tank and all of this, they, in front of the TV cameras and the media, they told racist jokes for 2 hours, you know, and that's what would happen. Right. And this was like every major city went through this. Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, you know, the Klan, the Nazis, the whatever, there'd be 4 people that would dress up in a Hitler costume, or they dress up in bed sheets, and they would have a stupid rally. There'd be like 5 people there, and all the media would like make it out to be the biggest event that had ever happened, right? It was like, oh my God. And like mainstream media would talk about nothing but that. And the cities would spend thousands of dollars to make sure that no one beat them up and that no one bothered them, and would like, practically erect a fortress around them. There'd be like so many police around them. And like 3 guys in white sheets or 3 guys in stupid Hitler costumes would stand there, and they would find like, I swear, they would find like mentally retarded people. Like they would find really dumb fucking people and pay them a lot of money, I swear. And they would stand there in their bed sheets or stand there in their stupid Hitler costumes, and stand there and tell racist jokes for an hour or something. And then on the other side of the police barricades, every communist group you ever heard of, the Workers' World Party, the RCP, the Progressive Labor Party, the ISO, the Anarchist, it would be like every communist group you ever heard of would show up with like baseball bats and chains, like they were going to heroically battle the Nazis. And it was all a stupid waste of time. I swear, I think that the FBI set up those whole things as fishing expeditions. Right? It was to see if any actual Nazis showed up, they could keep track of them, to see who all the communists were and keep track of it. It was a stupid thing. It was like a gimmick that happened, a LARP that happened in every major city, right? Every couple of years, every major city would have a stupid Nazi or KKK rally where 2 people would show up. And I remember in 2006, there was one in Los Angeles. I was not there in Los Angeles, but I watched videos of it on the internet. And one of the Nazis was wearing a German helmet, one of those German helmets with a spike on it. And then he had this just cracks me up. He had a piece of cardboard. It looked like a pizza box that he cut into a circle. And he had it as a shield, as his shield, right? It was a piece of cardboard. And he drew a swastika on it with a black magic marker. And he had, a cardboard shield to be his shield. And he had his German helmet. And like, communists and anarchists were beating this guy up. And I actually felt like, that's kind of like, that's not necessary. This is a grown man in a public place with a cardboard shield. You don't have to beat him up. He looks like a doofus. Like, it's like if someone's stupid enough to walk around with a cardboard shield and a German helmet in a public place, and that, he took his black magic marker and drew a swastika on his cardboard shield, and he's got a German helmet. This guy's obviously retarded, okay? And you don't have to beat him up. Like, it's kind of like unnecessary. It's kind of overkill, so I don't know. Things are a little bit different now, right? There are, there for a while, there are, Trump talks about immigration, and things are a little bit different now. But it's just like for a while that was a part of Cold War politics, late Cold War, normal neocon era politics that was very, very, very stupid. There you go. But, I don't know. I remember a couple years back on the anniversary of Charlottesville, I remember that there was a protest at the White House by some white supremacists. And so there was a huge gathering. I covered it. I was in the crowd with RT covering it, and we did lives all day. And there were thousands of people protesting them, but the actual Nazis at the White House, they were like teenage kids with MAGA hats on, and they were like the skinniest teenage kids you ever saw. There's like 10 of them. Right. But I found out that there was actually this is true story, on the other side of DC, there was some kind of Comic-Con, like comic book convention. And so I was joking with my friends that, there's going to be a kid who dresses up as his favorite elf or his favorite dwarf from Lord of the Rings. And he's got like an elvish rune on his shirt, and he's walking to the Comic-Con convention, and some doofus from Antifa is like, oh my God, that rune is a Nazi sign. And they all jump on him, it was just, I don't know. I don't know. You don't want to make light of this. I know, to communities, to the Black community that has dealt with lynching and hate crimes and all this isn't funny. And we shouldn't, we don't want to make light of Black men dangling from trees and their bodies being lit on fire and, the horrendous legacy of that stuff, right? We don't want to make light of that at all. And that's why it's very offensive, right? That's why Confederate flags are offensive. That's why 3 guys in a sheet makes people mad, right? Someone's from another planet. They're going to show up in Cleveland and be like, okay, there's 3 guys wearing bed sheets. They look like it's Halloween trick or treat and they're going as ghosts or something. They look stupid, but to the Black community, who lived in terror of being lynched and all, guys in sheets is not a joke. It's very serious. And so, we can understand, right? And, to Germans who lived under it, to Jews, to Russians, 27 million Russians died in World War II. It's not funny, right? So, we can try to just be like, they look stupid, but, they're fighting words. They're fighting words, right? There are many parts of the world where if you walk around with your middle finger, no one knows what it means. But around here, around the United States, if you walk around with your middle finger up, that's very offensive because it means something. Well, in America, if a guy wears a bed sheet, it means something. It means something, and it ain't funny. There's something to be said for that. And that doesn't mean I think these people are good or admirable. They look very, 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 very stupid when they do what they do. But anyway, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. You asked me what I thought of Oswald Mosley, and I told you what I think of Oswald Mosley, and then someone said Tommy Robinson was like Oswald Mosley, and Tommy Robinson, you are no Oswald Mosley. That's not to compliment Oswald Mosley, but give me a break. But there you go. All right. Gala says, Happy Easter. So Gala, is Orthodox Easter the same as regular Easter, or regular Easter? Is the same as Protestant and Catholic Easter this year? Let me Google that. Orthodox Easter 2024. Now, Orthodox Easter is on May 5th. Okay. So Easter is this coming Sunday, right? April 1st this year. But for the Orthodox community, it's on May 5th. That's quite a difference, right? It's like a whole month. So, well, thank you for wishing me a happy Easter. I am Protestant. I am going to a church workshop on Saturday that was originally supposed to be 2 days, and then they shortened it to be 1 day because they want people to be able to observe Easter with their families. I am definitely going to be observing Easter. It's Catholic and Protestant Easter, right? Terry Strange is reminding us it is Maundy Thursday. Right. So when I was a kid, I thought it was Monday, Thursday, right? I just, they'd say Monday, Thursday, right? With their Ohio accents. I thought it was Monday, Thursday. It's Moundy, right? The night of the Last Supper, right? And then Good Friday, and then Easter Sunday. And then I guess for Spanish speaking Catholics, Saturday is called Sábado Sancto, the Sacred Saturday. I never heard anyone talk about Sacred Saturday. I just knew Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. I never knew, but in my wife, who's from Guatemala, she talks about Sábado Sancto, right? The Sacred Saturday. And then I believe also Mardi Gras, the day before Lent begins is called, that's, 40 days ago. That's, the beginning of Lent, is called Fat Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, right? Fat Tuesday, because you eat a lot because you can't eat for the rest of the month, right? Fat Tuesday, right? Yeah, Fat Tuesday. Fat Tuesday was February 13th. That was the day before Lent started, right? And I guess it's officially called Shrove Tuesday. Very interesting. Shrove Tuesday, Pancake Tuesday, or Fat Tuesday is the day. Okay, so we know we're now getting our Easter-related days of the week down. Maundy Thursday, not Monday Thursday, Maundy Thursday, the day of the Last Supper. Friday, Good Friday, the day of the crucifixion. And Easter Sunday, and Sábado Sancto, the Sacred Saturday. All right. Very good. Very, very good. Very good. Well, tomorrow night we do be eating. There you go. Tuesday, maybe tomorrow night I'll get religious on here. I always wonder how religious I should get on these streams, honestly, because I know that, I'm much more religious than I've ever been. I think I'm a very religious person at this point. I think about the Bible a lot and but at the same time, I know that there's a lot of people that love these streams that don't want to hear that. But there's a lot of people that say that's the best part. They say, Caleb, the fact that you can talk communism and talk Christianity on these streams is amazing. So maybe tomorrow I'll get religious on here. We'll see. We'll see if I'm in the mood for it. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see. I would, we'll see. You know what I mean? Gala says Christ is king. I agree with you, Gala. But maybe I'll get religious on here tomorrow. Maybe I won't. Just depends if I'm feeling the spirit, right? If I'm feeling the spirit, I might get religious on here, but maybe I won't. We shall see. You'll have to tune in and see. You don't know for sure. I might not get religious, so tune in and see. We'll see. But yeah, it's been fun, everybody. Yeah. So, all right. I am going to say goodnight for now. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow night. I may or may not get religious tomorrow night. You'll just have to tune in and see. Yeah. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. I guess we're going to end the stream. Actually, before I end the stream, I'm going to do a CPI reel and then I'll do the closing reel, right? Because I love this clip. I made a clip just of great stuff from CPI. Okay, and now we'll put on the closing music. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.